Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Edinburgh Napier University at our Craiglockett campus. It's great to be here for one of our professorial lectures. So we had to suspend these during the pandemic, and we only launched them again about 2 months ago. So this is our third, and we've had such diverse. We've had a lecture on toxicology, on social tourism, and now a fantastic lecture, I have no doubt, about women's health in the field of midwifery. And I'm delighted to be able to introduce Professor Yvonne Kuipers, who has been with us for nearly 18 months, actually 18 months now. But we've only just, as I said, got the opportunity to hear her talk about her research to date. And Yvonne although she joined us in 2021, she's no stranger to Scotland, because I just discovered she did her midwifery in Paisley in the west of Scotland. And then she took a role in Glasgow Caledonian. We forgive her for that. And then she joined us. Has been an active midwife for 20 years, finished her PhD in the University of Maastricht in 2016. And we're absolutely delighted, Yvonne, to hear you talk about midwife-led care, Utopia or reality.
Need these as the answer. Today, I stand before you with great excitement and passion to discuss the crucial role and the possibilities of the future of midwife-led continuity of care. Midwife-led continuity of care is an evidence-based model and has frequently and repeatedly demonstrated to improve outcomes for women and their families. According to the WHO, midwife-led continuity of care should be the first choice for all childbearing women. Although it's vital to me that each one of you feels valued, respected, and included here, during this lecture, I refer to the midwife as she or as her. I will use the word woman or women because these words predominate to refer to birthing people and to the midwifery profession, which mainly consists of women. Midwife-led continuity of care is a model whereby the midwife is the lead professional in planning, organising and providing care to a woman from booking to the postnatal period, in a multidisciplinary network of consultation and referral with other care providers. Care in this model is provided by the same midwife or by a small team of midwives. Over the years, evidence has been piling onto evidence, showing the positive effects of midwife-led continuity of care compared with other models of care in terms of improving outcomes, such as the reduction of intrapartum medical interventions in general, and induction of labour, pain relief, amniotomy and episiotomy in particular, lower rates of preterm birth, lower rates of hospitalisation, and higher rates of spontaneous vaginal birth, breastfeeding, and attributing to bonding and attachment between mother and child. Positive effects also show through the high rates of birth satisfaction among women and their satisfaction with care, and women reporting to feel more resilient, empowered, and having a voice in decision-making, and developing a sense of self as a mother, providing them with lifelong skills. An economic evaluation using a sensitivity analysis to assess the cost-effectiveness of midwife-led care in the UK was performed 10 years ago by Ryan and colleagues. And they estimated that implementation of midwife-led continuity of care at the time corresponded with an initial cost increase of roughly £10 million per year, but an annual saving of nearly £24 million per year. And per woman, this implied an estimated cost increase of £108, but a saving of £253. The authors, they highlighted the lack of appropriate evaluation measures, emphasizing the results to be an estimation rather than an accurate figure. Nevertheless, the analysis suggests a financial benefit, and it's no rocket science to anticipate that there are also additional huge social financial benefits because of midwife-led continuity of care. But this remains a guess, as this requires long-term economic evaluation, and that's currently non-existing. So how come, despite the evidence of effectiveness and utility of the model on a global level, varies in stages of adoption and implementation? Evidence can apparently be selectively or be totally overridden by something affecting the adoption and the implementation or the upscaling of midwife-led continuity of care in maternity services. When women are denied midwife-led continuity of care as their first choice of care as recommended by the WHO, and based on the evidence, we can conclude that this affects maternal and child health and well-being, family quality of life, and societal functioning. I've been trying to get my head around how to explain the phenomenon of non-mal or partial adoption or the lack of or poorly utilized midwife-led continuity of care. Looking at the world around me, I see a world facing huge challenges and developmental goals like climate change, peace, including violence and weapon accessibility, the carbon emissions crisis, the tobacco industry, just to name a few, all having huge health and societal impact. Based on the evidence and the scale of health and societal importance, the lack of or poorly utilized midwife-led continuity of care also seems to be a major public and global issue, not dissimilar to the global political and social challenges that I just mentioned. Currently, and specifically in the normal birth debate, individual and anecdotal narratives and the individual social media voices are privileged, winning the days from evidence, gaining momentum in politics, so it seems. And midwives, they're drawn into the discussion, trying to come to terms with their own thoughts and their own experiences. It seems that all who are involved in maternity services or consider themselves to know something about midwives' continuity of care have different and sometimes conflicting opinions, contributing to duality, segregation, and opposition of the public opinion, division, and disagreement. In other words, midwife-led continuity of care can lead to political, social, attitude, and group polarization. But what has this rather somber portrayal and slightly loomed picture of our world to do with selective use of evidence, non-mal or fragmented adoption or implementation of midwife-led continuity of care? You might ask yourself. All social, political and global issues, such as midwife-led continuity of care, have two things in common. And here they come. One is complexity. Complexity is shown by the variety and the diversity of parties, stakeholders and systems that are entwined and have an impact on each other. Also, population experiences and outcomes, they can differ from individual ones. This always includes alternative views. The second commonality is chaos, representing the underlying interconnectedness that exists in apparently random or spontaneous events, including hidden patterns, nuances, and apparently unordered systems and unpredictability with implied sensitivity. Do we recognize complexity and chaos in midwife-led continuity of care? Because I certainly do. In this lecture, I will reflect on macro and micro social structures that influence adoption, implementation, and upscaling of midwife-led continuity of care. Direct and indirect activities around midwife-led continuity of care can be regarded as one cohesive and coherent chain of individuals, organizations, and events, showing a similarity with the industrial complex. And this industrial complex is a socio-economic concept representing an entangled and interactive network where the individual agents, parties, and stakeholders, representing the macro and micro levels, pursue own interests, regardless of or at the expense of society and of individuals. The concept was first mentioned by Eisenhower in his political farewell in 1961, obviously way beyond my time. I've adopted this model, calling it the midwife-led continuity of care industrial complex. It helps to shape my trail of thoughts, which I'm going to share with you. I will share with you my exploration of what I think the truth of midwife-led continuity of care evidence brings to various parties and stakeholders, how it might interfere, what drives their agendas, and what is at stake for them. As a first step, I will identify the relevant factors that contribute to the complexity and the chaos that affect midwife-led continuity of care. I will draw these factors from my own research. I will subsequently order them in such a way to show you that stakeholder systems and how various stakeholders perceive the world affect the future of midwife-led continuity of care. And I will give you examples of how this can pan out. As you can see, the model is currently empty and needs to be filled with factors that influence the adoption, the implementation and upscaling of midwife-led continuity of care. I will fill the model, sharing what I found through my research. As a researcher, I developed a strong focus on the lived experiences and the uniqueness of the individual woman, reports and outcome measures of her well-being. I explored a woman's perceptions on pregnancy and birth, on the transition to motherhood and her needs to prepare for these life events. I learned from the woman's experiences of and responses to these events. I explored the worth and the need of respecting the woman's experiential knowledge, her embodied knowledge, giving a voice to woman's own truth. I looked at the effect of the number of midwives being involved in the woman's care on outcomes and on women's satisfaction with care, focusing on elements such as participation in care, self-determination and shared decision-making. When comparing the midwife with other maternity care providers, the midwife providing continuity of care always showing to be the best evaluated professional regarding these elements of care, and specifically by women. From the various quantitative and qualitative studies I have conducted so far, I can only conclude that the evidence shows that women immensely gain from midwife-led continuity of care, as their health and well-being and their life course are at stake. So what is it on the woman's agenda that might withhold her from embracing the model or demanding this model of care from her maternity care providers? It is known that 79% of pregnant women read blogs, websites, and join online fora, serving as resources for information about care during pregnancy, labor, and birth. 68% of pregnant women watch reality TV that portray pregnancy and birth experiences of women. I conducted a media analysis of the UK version of One Born Every Minute, and the analysis shows a predominant portrayal of medicalized and technocratic birth. There is no portrayal of midwife-led care or relational continuity between the woman and the midwife. And when midwife-led care is not presented as the norm, or when midwives are portrayed as practicing under the auspices of the medical profession, women might be perceived as alternative, irresponsible, a bad mother, or as risky when it comes to wanting or receiving midwife-led continuity of care. And being aware of the rather opinionated, dogmatic, and domineering nature of social media, women might risk how they are perceived and validated by others. Interviews with women show that being honest about what they think or do can evoke very negative responses, leading to stigmatization, labeling, and othering. Over the years, I developed a woman-centered care research domain. The philosophy of woman-centered care underpins and informs the pragmatic utility of midwife-led continuity of care. An advanced concept analysis of woman-centered care revealed that a core philosophical foundation informs a midwife's collaborative and interpersonal actions and her relationship with the woman, and what she strives to achieve as midwife. In woman-centered care, both the woman and the midwife are regarded as individual human beings, one with professional knowledge and the other one with experiential knowledge. Woman-centered care has a dual and equal focus on physical parameters of pregnancy and birth and on maternal well-being and experiences, with consideration for the midwife's well-being. Subsequent studies repeatedly emphasized that midwifery is contextualized within distinct principal thoughts that underpin midwifery practice. Interestingly, a recent systematic mixed studies review about women's emotional touchpoints during the perinatal care journey performed with Napier colleagues shows that women assign a similar existentialist belief to pregnancy, birth, and the postpartum. Midwives' intentions to adhere to the philosophy of care are high. However, practicalities can interfere with the philosophy. Midwives providing continuity of care are sometimes regarded as practicing outside the social norm of maternity services by their colleagues. Remaining loyal to the philosophy of care can be difficult when collectiveness is lacking. We know that newly graduated midwives with proactive ideas about care gradually lose these ideas when ideas and reality do not match. Not able to remain loyal to ideations and intentions can affect the midwife's work morale, acknowledging a discrepancy between intention and reality of providing midwife-led continuity of care. How to create loyalty among midwives towards midwife-led continuity of care? I asked student midwives in the Netherlands during a research activity to look beyond the midwifery profession and the healthcare domain to seek ideas of how to provide relationship-based care. Amongst a variety of professionals, they interview staff members from a Dutch theme park called the Efteling. This theme park is known for its high levels of customer and staff loyalty. Their hospitality concept aims to enchant their customers and their staff to transform an experience into a positive and long-lasting memory. I remember when the students returned from the interview, they were ecstatic, saying, "Yvonne, this is also what women want. They want to be enchanted by midwives." Intrigued and wanting to know more, I followed a workshop at the Efteling with as topic of interest the synergy between their policy to enchant and providing midwife-led continuity of care. And this resulted in a student project called I See You, during which a student midwife shadows a woman throughout her perinatal journey. The student needs to immerse in the world of the woman and gain rapport through observation, listening and dialogue instead of through clinical activities, exploring the woman's perspective, the meanings and interpretation the woman assigns to childbirth and to the care she receives. The students had to reflect on the enchanting role of the midwife. The evaluation showed that the project equips student midwives with competencies and qualities that support them in their learning of providing midwife-led continuity of care. A knowledge illustration exploring the midwife's woman-centered care virtues shows that midwife-led continuity of care requires a socialization process and transformative learning or growth among midwives and student midwives, which should be a collective process. The first step is gaining knowledge and reflecting on this knowledge. And at Napier, we try to facilitate this first step with our monthly All You Need to Know About Continuity of Care newsletter, for which we received internal funding. And I'm sure that you already all read this, but if not, please do sign up for it. A study on the feasibility of midwife-led continuity of care reveals that the model does not suit all midwives, mostly depending on their home situation, family commitments, the roster, rotation, undefined working hours, their skill set, being on call, financial reward, and work percentages. By embracing the midwife-led continuity of care evidence, the midwife's work-life balance can be at stake, making the midwife apprehensive to provide midwife-led continuity of care, or even considering or leaving this service or the profession altogether. To tackle this, a midwife-centered approach would be of merit. So in summary, I've listed the micro-level factors that contribute to the midwife-led continuity of care industrial complex, and these are the following, as you can read. Social media portrayal, communication about risks of mortality and morbidity, philosophy, outcomes of pregnancy and birth, maternal well-being and maternal experiences, otherness, socialization of midwife-led continuity of care, collectiveness, organization of midwives' work, and work-life balance of midwives, and a midwife-centered approach. A narrative inquiry about midwives' conflicting values emphasizes that the midwife functions in a wider healthcare context. The midwife often experiences duality, conflicts, and asynchronicity between her own values and those of the woman, between her own values and those of inter- and multidisciplinary colleagues, and between her own values and policies, guidelines, standards, the system of the healthcare organization and social norms, evidence, and women's rights. A mixed method study exploring the impact of work-related traumatic events on the midwife's professional and personal life showed that these conflicting values are ranked as third, and they come after being involved in severe obstetric complications and maternal and neonatal death. So this indicates that we need to guard the well-being of midwives. Since 2019, I've been part of the EU-funded Cost Action Perinatal Mental Health and Birth-Related Trauma, a collaborative network of multidisciplinary practitioners and researchers from 29 different countries. A discourse analysis of the social conception of space of birth that was conducted as part of this project shows that, like midwives, the birthing woman experiences disparities between her own values and the institutional rules, boundaries, and regulations when it comes to giving birth. A more recent multidisciplinary principle-based concept analysis shows that birth and midwifery care are embedded in a much wider context, in an ecological system of social, historical, political, and cultural features and human behavior. Certain a priori macro-level societal aspects, such as the overall traditional norms about reproduction, birth, and motherhood, shapes the woman's subordinate position and reproductive role in society when compared to men. Factors such as the societal acceptance of the patriarchal and the hierarchical over medical and techno-medical dominant ethos of the maternity community exercise power over the birthing woman. This ethos is embodied in reproductive health and hospital protocols, policies, rules, and guidelines, and in the dynamics of medicalization. According to feminism, midwives are regarded at the lower end of the medical hierarchy and subordinate to obstetrician within medical institutions. Androcentric bias is believed to be deeply embedded in working environments in maternity services. So what's at stake here? Will midwife-led continuity of care facilitate unison between women and midwives, establishing strong relationships, forming a front, demanding a more bottom-up approach executed by women in maternity services, threatening the dominant role of male doctors, medicalized and technocratic birth, and of the hierarchical regulation? Will doctors lose status when birth becomes less medicalized? Will the medical industry lose income when birth becomes less technocratic? Will policy and decision makers lose power or control? Will it lead to altering quality of care indicators due to embracing the evidence of midwife-led continuity of care? And will embracing the evidence threaten traditional values? I can only guess. Research is desperately needed. Summarizing the micro and macro level factors here, I've added midwives' well-being to the left column to the micro level factors, and on the right-hand side, as part of the macro level factors, I added rules and regulations of maternity services, social norms, women's position in society, hierarchical structure of maternity services, medicalization and technocratic ethos, and feminism. And as you can see, I also added women's socio-demographic factors, pre-existing morbidity and multimorbidity, and the geographical area. These are fixed factors, and these need to be considered when we want to look at the future. Because, for example, it's 44% of women that have a medical condition before they enter pregnancy, so we can't, that's not something that we can ignore. And the geographical area is important because it can be rural, it can be urban, but we also have our early adopter sites of the NHS, so we need to consider that as well. Having identified the key variables making up the midwife-led continuity of care industrial complex, we are ready for the next step. What I did is I reshuffled and clustered the key variables according to their impact and certainty. Impact can either be great or small, certain or uncertain. And the factors with great impact, they are expected to hit the future of midwife-led continuity of care model, potential force. And as you can see, more than half of the variables are assigned great impact with varying certainty, either certain or uncertain. For taking the next step, I reflected on the 13 variables in the right-hand column that have great impact on the complexity and chaos of midwife-led continuity of care, looking for the underlying dimensions that determine the direction and the content of the future scenarios of the care model. And this is what I came up with. Reflecting on the factors, it seems to me that there are two different dimensions that determine the future of midwife-led continuity of care. One is the makeup of the organizational culture, which is called the identity system of midwife-led continuity of care. And the second one is how stakeholders perceive midwife-led continuity of care, and that's called the orientation to the world. And on the horizontal axis, you can see the continuum of the identity system. At the left hand of the axis, fixed refers to a system that is resolute, providing a singular pragmatic voice and perspective, and not per se requiring in-depth knowledge of midwife-led continuity of care. And fluid, on the right end of the axis, refers to a system that evolves and adapts like a living organism, requiring a deep understanding of the story of midwife-led continuity of care. On the vertical axis, you see the continuum of orientation to the world. And at the top end of the axis, reasoning refers to the intellectualist conception to structure understanding of and engagement with the world of midwife-led continuity of care, producing various kinds of judgments and generating knowledge and thinking. Making and experiencing meaning on the bottom end of the axis refers to constituting a way of being in and engaging with midwife-led continuity of care in a deep, visceral manner, producing emotional response patterns and feelings that lie at the heart of the capacity to understand the situation we find ourselves and making it meaningful. As a last step, I've constructed scenarios by combining intuition and imagination with analytical rigor. The scenarios will make sense of complexity and chaos in the dynamics of midwife-led continuity of care through a process of considering different possible future situations and outcomes. You don't have to like them when I share them with you. I will start with a scenario in the right upper quadrant, sense and sensibility, following the quadrants clockwise, the birth of mothers, too many sisters, and hiding my spark. The first scenario is shaped by an orientation of reasoning and a fluid system, and I've called it sense and sensibility, obviously. I'm Jennifer, and I'm a manager of the local health board. I've witnessed the transformative changes in midwifery and society over the years, and this knowledge has shaped my approach as a manager. I hold a deep admiration for midwives as they form the backbone of our service. In recognizing the significance of continuity of care, I have entrusted midwives with the autonomy to create their own rosters and determine the most effective ways to provide consistent support. I understand their need for flexibility and acknowledge that midwives may occasionally require a break from the demands of continuous care to ensure their life balance. By granting them this opportunity, I am to maintain a sustainable work environment. Evaluation among women in the trust shows that not all women want midwife-led continuity of care. And as a result, our target is for 60% of women in our local service to receive this model of care, allowing for a balance between different care preferences and providing midwives with the necessary space to thrive. In collaboration with obstetricians, I seek ways to incorporate their perspectives, but without compromising the autonomy of midwives in decision-making processes. Recognizing the importance of empathy and sense of shared understanding in healthcare, I made a deliberate and strategic decision to ensure that 80% of our obstetricians are female and have personal experience as mothers themselves. Our Trust Public Relations Department portray the value of midwifery and the continuity model. They highlight the relationships built between the midwives and the women they care for, and how this fosters a sense of trust and understanding. They showcase stories of positive birth experiences, testimonials from mothers, and statistics that showcase our commitment to safe and supportive care. The messaging aims to instill confidence in the public. The next scenario is shaped by a fluid system and an orientation of making and experiencing meaning, and I've called this the birth of mothers. I am Monica, a soon-to-be granny. I found happiness in witnessing my daughter Marjorie embark on a journey towards motherhood. I can't help but reflect on the stark differences between our experiences. During my time, pregnancy was often reduced to a mere checklist of societal expectations captured in carefully curated Facebook posts. Oh, the burden, all for the sake of social validation. But my Marjorie, she has discovered a different path. She has found a midwife-moderated Facebook community where meaningful conversations flourish, where respect is paramount and confidentiality is sacred. This support system extends beyond the digital realm, as they organize meetups and monthly gatherings at the local midwife's practice. And within the walls of this converted community hall, funded by the council, Marjorie and her fellow mothers-to-be delve into the true essence of pregnancy, birth, and motherhood, conversations guided by the midwives. These sessions equip Marjorie for the transformative journey that lies ahead. The midwives who guide and support the group are more than healthcare professionals. They are beacons of understanding and compassion, but it goes beyond that. The pictures adorning the walls of the practice, accompanied by snippets of their life stories, paint a vivid portrait of the individuals behind the professionals. Marjorie gets to truly know these remarkable women. In this inclusive haven, women from all walks of life unite, transcending societal boundaries and celebrating the diversity that motherhood encompasses. Lifelong friendships are formed within these walls. Marjorie's midwives adapt to her needs, offering both practice visits and home visits, ensuring convenience and comfort throughout her pregnancy. I was even invited to one of these visits, where amidst the warmth and intimacy, we delved into the intricacies of our mother-daughter relationship and its influence on Marjorie's perception of motherhood. The midwife's thought-provoking questions about prenatal screening and the uncertainties of labor revealed a deep commitment to guiding Marjorie through the complexities of life's choices and challenges. And when the time comes for Marjorie to give birth, she has the freedom to choose her birthing environment. Nothing is set in stone. The midwife, a steadfast presence, accompanies Marjorie wherever she goes, ensuring unwavering support and guidance. It is a reminder that the true essence of life's most precious moments lies in the relationships we foster. The third scenario is shaped by a fixed system and orientation of making and experiencing meaning, and I've called that Too Many Sisters. I'm Nadia. I was born in the confines of Kenya, now trapped in the abyss of Wester Hills. Carrying my third child within me, my body is riddled with high blood pressure, diabetes, and the burden of relying on antidepressants to survive. The maternity system and protocols feel stifling and impersonal. I am assigned a lovely midwife called Rebecca, a fleeting glimmer of compassion. However, any semblance of consistent care is shattered as I'm shuffled between different specialized midwives. Lovely women, but all claiming that my vulnerability necessitates such fractured attention. Of course I'm vulnerable. I am mortal, plagued by ill health and consumed by the love I hold for my children. I'm only human, and vulnerability is an inherent aspect of life itself. I accept this reality, but it seems the system cannot. The fragmented nature of my care reflects the fragmented pieces of my being. Each different midwife assigned to oversee my blood pressure, my diet, and my mental health is undoubtedly well-meaning, but the continuous stream of assessments and interventions perpetuates a pervasive medicalized approach. The ceaseless parade of unfamiliar faces threatens to overshadow the profound personal significance I ascribe to the transformative journey of motherhood I am embarking upon once again. All I yearn for is a special midwife, a constant presence by my side, with whom I can share this sacred experience and who validates the immense importance and impact on my well-being. Rebecca has promised to accompany me in the upcoming visits with the other midwives, offering a glimmer of hope and a lifeline that perhaps, just perhaps, we may forge a fleeting bond amidst the chaos. And this is the last scenario, and that is shaped by a fixed system and an orientation of reasoning, and it's called Hiding My Spark. I'm Anna, a newly qualified midwife, trapped in a suffocating dystopia. My mind and body are deeply ingrained by social norms that ruthlessly dictate the functional role of women in reproduction. From a young age, I've been indoctrinated to believe that my purpose lies solely in being a midwife. I believe that too, but because of other reasons. My existence is a mere puppetry, controlled by a malevolent manager who wields his power with a cold hierarchical mindset. This man, obsessed with epidemiology and cold statistics, views the birth outcomes of our unit as nothing more than data points. Predictably abysmal, given the heartless ethos plastered on the labor ward walls. No pain, no gain. 1 million women have done this before you. On your mark, give birth, go back to work. To my horror, he finds amusement in these grotesque quotes, proudly sharing them on Twitter, echoed and applauded by other heartless NHS managers of the male gender. And us, midwives, are pressured to retweet his tweets. In his eyes, emotional well-being and maternal feelings and the overall morale of the staff hold no significance. He dismisses this as trivial, asserting that they possess no quantifiable impact on the quality of care or on outcomes. My unit, like countless others across the country, is governed by a soulless machinery. There's even a CTG surveillant present 24/7. The system prioritizes measurable indicators, and my unit is mandated by strict protocols. My manager wields total control over the roster, effectively holding the reins of my life. In this perverse reality, I've come to realize that as a midwife, my passion and true beliefs must remain hidden and suppressed. The system forces me into conformity, stripping away my autonomy and rendering my voice irrelevant. I'm a cog in a monstrous machine that thrives on the subjugation of women and the erasure of their individuality. I understand that these scenarios can cause different responses, and because they tend to represent extreme cases and provide us with future possibilities, and some to be avoided and others, maybe to consider. The scenarios do not predict the future. They're not meant to do that. But I have reasons to believe that midwife-led continuity of care in Scotland will not result in a dystopian scenario. And I say this as an insider as much as an outsider. I've lived in Scotland and in the Netherlands. I've lived as a family and raised my children in both countries. I've been a student in both countries, and I worked in Scotland, the Netherlands and Belgium. And from an insider-outsider perspective, Scotland has unique strengths and cultural features, apart from the whiskey and the kill cells, not army. Although these can't guarantee the success of midwife-led continuity of care, they surely need to be cherished as the model of care could thrive because of them. 1. Scotland has a unique national education curriculum being used from nursery to secondary school, the curriculum of excellence. The primary drive for the curriculum is to provide opportunities for young people in Scotland to develop knowledge, skills and attributes necessary for living in an increasingly complex world, to adapt, think critically and flourish in today's world. How appropriate. The totality of the curriculum is planned for and experienced by learners across 4 capacities: to become successful learners, confident individuals, responsible citizens and effective contributors. Examples of attributes of the curriculum of excellence include, for example, openness to new thinking, self-respect, to to secure values and beliefs, resilience, respect for others, just to name a few. These capacities and attributes are of vital importance to implement midwife-led continuity of care. The curriculum was implemented 2010 here in Scotland, and that means that our students and the future generation of midwives are all very familiar with these fundamental capacities. These capacities are building blocks to raise a sustainable midwife-led care generations of midwives, carrying forward principled thoughts that are part of their upbringing. There's a huge opportunity here, right on our doorstep. Why not use it? Second, midwife-led continuity of care is in essence a community model. And Scotland has a very high community sense historically and culturally. 3/4 of Scots say that they feel part of their local community, with 3 in 5 feeling a strong sense of community spirit where they live. Young people aged 18 to 24 are the most likely to volunteer or help out in their community. And as Scots, you might think nothing of it. That's always what I've experienced when I said it to people here. But it's precious. And midwife-led continuity of care might thrive because in Scotland, a community spirit is historically and culturally bound. Another thing is that since long, the word midwife has been associated with wise woman, which means being entrusted with wisdom in the practicalities of everyday life, being entrusted with emotional intelligence, and showing transformational and transactional leadership in finding answers and making decisions while caring for childbearing women. The wise woman is an archetype very well known in Scotland, and Scotland has a long history of wise women. Scotland has a strong bond with its own history. Maybe we can draw upon this historical and cultural element in midwife-led continuity of care. New Zealand is one of the few countries that managed to scale up continuity of midwifery care at a national level. Like Scotland, they have a low population base and rural areas. To serve the rural areas in New Zealand, midwives usually have a dual degree, nursing and midwifery. Right, at Napier, we happen to offer the short midwifery program to qualified nurses that work in the rural Scottish areas. This is a gem we need to treasure because of its potential for the future of midwife-led continuity of care. And finally, we cannot forget that Scotland has a government supporting the Best Start report. We have a supportive Chief Midwifery Officer and supportive Directors of Midwifery. Without leadership, midwife-led continuity of care would be lost from the outset. Today, I have shared my thoughts with you. Many of them are based on my own work. And of course, I have not done all this work by myself. I am lucky to always have been surrounded by fantastic, hard-working midwives, researchers and colleagues with passion for midwifery, believing midwifery is the very best job in the world, as is being with women. These colleagues all contributed to where I am now today, here at Napier in Scotland, a country I personally think has a chance to be a successor of midwife-led continuity of care, of which I want to be part of. I'm here to see it happen. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Professor Alison Machin and I'm the Dean of the School of Health and Social Care in which midwifery sits. And standing here very proud. Congratulations, Yvonne, that was an excellent lecture. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Informed, impactful, inspired. And I'm sure that colleagues in the room will have takeaway thoughts afterwards, reflecting on things like your case studies, scenarios. Very impactful. So thank you very much for that. I feel very excited about the future of midwifery research at Edinburgh Napier University, led by Yvonne and other colleagues, and we've had a step change in our research activity within the subject group, within the school, and it complements our existing excellence around midwifery education. So fantastic, and I feel really sort of excited at that. So thank you very much. Luckily, we do have time for some questions. So if anybody has any questions that they want to ask Yvonne, and put her on the spot, or maybe challenge her on one or two of the challenges to us, that would be very welcome.
Thank you, Yvonne, for that. Yvonne, could I go back to the socialisation of particularly student midwives into continuity models? And as educationalists here at Edinburgh Napier, we're one of 3 centres in Scotland who are actually delivering midwifery education. We're taking a top-down approach. We've got a Scottish Government policy driver, Best Start, driving the change in the maternity service models. But I would see us as educationalists taking a bottom-up approach in that we're responsible training and socialising student midwives into continuity models and providing the future workforce and an ease of transition into these models. But right now we've got a hybrid model. I would say we've got some pockets of continuity and we've got some still traditional models of maternity care, which makes it quite complex sometimes in a 3-year midwifery programme trying to expose student midwives into continuity models. Is there anything in the curriculum that you think we are missing or we could redesign to ensure that all students get a continuity experience?
I think before we even talk about getting the experience, it is about thinking about it. And it's about pre-contemplating and contemplating in what you think that midwife-led continuity of care is, but also whether, what your philosophy of care is, whether you are able to onboard on the model because it fits with your philosophy. And I must say that I found that, when you talk to first-year student midwives and you ask them, why are you here? They have strong, they actually have strong philosophical thoughts about why they want to do what they, why they're here. And that is a very important part of the onboarding, because that is the very first step. They need to know what it is they want, why they are doing what they're doing, and what they want to achieve by being a midwife. And these in-between steps of how you do that, that can be shown in practice, but it can also be incorporated in your lectures. But it's very much coming back every time. What I tend to use is, I don't know whether you know Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. What Apple uses is this is why we do it, and this is what I want to achieve, and this is how I do it. And having conversation with student midwives, always learn, I was always very impressed about what they come up with. And I think it's sometimes I think we need to cherish these initial thoughts and for them to come back to it, as in, when the time gets rough, why am I here? When it's getting challenging, why am I here? What am I doing? And what am I exactly doing? And the difficulty, of course, is that because the clinical area, they don't offer continuity of care as in the same way. But there's always, if you instruct students to look for the features of midwife-led care and to reflect on them, and I think maybe even emphasize that a bit more, that really will help to the socialization process. And it's very much about, contemplate what it is you want to do, think about it, why are you here, what is it you want to do. Knowledge, as I was referring to the continuity to our newsletter, but it is providing them with, and I think in this day and age, you need to provide them with positive knowledge and sort of maybe use the technique of the broken record. That's what we do with the newsletter. But it helps, and it's sometimes little things. And that is the very first step of socialization, and then it goes further, and then they go out in practice, and they can reflect on what they see, and they can. But because sometimes you have to say to students, when there's no continuity of care, that is actually a really good experience, because that is what you don't want to be or don't want to do. So it is thinking about it in a very reflexive way, and I think a constant dialogue with students is very important here, because there will be a discrepancy between what we teach them and what it is they see in practice. And when I was doing the research about women-centered care, I realized I was creating a theory-practice gap for my students. And one way I felt bad about it, but on the other hand, I thought, this is what they need. There is a gap. How are you going to bridge that gap as a future midwife? Does that answer a wee bit, Gail?
Any other questions?
Thank you very much, Yvonne. I enjoyed that. Now, you and I have known each other for many years from your time as a student, and you have always been very passionate about midwife-led care. And also with my background as a community midwife prior to education, I've also been very interested. My areas of expertise are in accountability and autonomy. And you did put up two lists, one on the micro and one on the macro. Now, the bottom line is this is not working. And I just wondered, obviously you've done a lot of work in this. If you could change one thing on that macro list, now I know we've touched on the education, we can do that. Well, not me any longer, but we can do the micro, and so can the NHS staff. But if there was one thing on that macro list that you think would help, and you also spoke about New Zealand, where I've got a lot of experience, they have a different employment model. It's completely different. What would you change, or what do you think could be a driver to make this all happen?
I think that the way it is now, I mean, it's the whole best start is a transformation process, a process of change. And I think there's no process without dynamics. Change always, is accompanied by people who like it, who don't like it. And that is same here. I think because we tend to, I think we see the woman and the midwife as the main stakeholders in the whole model, which I think is quite right. And we are very good in looking after midwives, but we're not really that good in looking after ourselves. So I would, if I would have, the money to do it, or if I could do it, I think I would sit down with midwives and really have that bottom approach, as in what works for you. And coming from a system where, coming from the Netherlands, a system where this is not the norm, but easier than it is here, and we're more adjusted in the system. But what I've found is that there are actually, as in my scenario, there are women who are not particularly keen on, on this model, who just want to, get into hospital and have all the pain relief they want, and not a lot of fuss, and get out. And there's women who really need that emotional bond, as was presented in the model. And I think ideally it would be good if before we have that first antenatal visit, we have a conversation with a woman asking her, what is it you want? What is it you want from your midwife? And am I that midwife who can provide that to you? Because if I'm in that continuity model of care, and there is a woman who's not really, fussed, then you might think, but do you really want me as a midwife? So I think we should have, it's also just going off track here, but we've done a review at Napier looking at the emotional touch points during the perinatal care journey of women. And we identified nearly 300 different emotional touch points, and that's topics, activities, anything you can think of that evoke emotions among women. So how on earth, as a midwife, can you cover 280 topics during those 9 months of care? You can't. But when we did the analysis, we did an epistemic network analysis, what came out from it was that women, that actually the underlying concept underneath it was that you should have conversations about, what does this mean to you to be pregnant? What does it mean to you to become a mother? Do you know what's going on in your care? Do you understand it? And is it manageable for you? Where do you need help? So it looks as if we need to have different conversations with women. and making it, more fundamental conversations. And I think midwives should do that too. And as I said in one of the scenarios that not all midwives wanted to provide continuity of care, I think we should respect that. Because there's no point of being a midwife who can't be the midwife she wants to be, looking after a woman. That's not going to be effective or helpful or a good experience.
Any other questions? And let off lightly.
Winding. Can I ask you something?
Come on. Not me. Don't ask me anything.
Oh, no. Thinking about the 4 scenarios, who would prefer scenario 1? So that's sense and sensibility. That's what's this manager of on the NHS talking about. One hand. Okay. What about the model of care that Monica was talking about her daughter and the converted? You, Connie? What about the woman with the multiple midwives because of her high blood pressure and the last one? So you see, usually when you use this method, there's always 2 scenarios that sort of people can relate to. But by also providing this very dystopic scenario that makes you sort of think, well, I don't want to go there, how can we avoid it? So that's the functionality of having those different scenarios and just presenting it that way, and then you think, oh, well, I might like that and I really dislike that and I don't want to go there. So what do we need to do to not end up there? So that's the whole point of the exercise.
Thank you. I have the great pleasure of thanking you for coming this evening, and would invite you to continue networking and have conversations with each other and Yvonne, and have a few refreshments downstairs. And the final thing to do, of course, is just to say well done and thank you to Yvonne once again. Can we all say